Yars Revenge is one of the most famous and popular games for the original Atari VCS, and it's long been held up as a great example of the perfect game loop. Yars Revenge nails its 10 to 15 seconds of making the enemy base vulnerable to a special cannon shot, then executing it and being rewarded with a neat-looking explosion. Yars Recharged keeps most of the basic ideas from the classic, but adds a layer of arcade-style space shooting, then overlays the now familiar graphical and musical presentation of the Recharged series to the mix. It isn't accurate to say there haven't been other Yars games. There have been quite a few over the years, but none of them have ever come close to equaling the tight gameplay or popularity of the original Yars Revenge. Yars Recharged is easily the best Yars game since the original. Yars Recharged keeps the idea of a required special shot to beat the Coteal base. It also requires the shot to be acquired through destroying the base's protection, which comes in the form of lots of armor and plenty of cannons and power stations, each of which shoot various kinds of shots. There's no middle safe zone, although you're protected from everything but the Coteal cannon when inside of a left side zone that appears when your Zorlon cannon is ready. The levels are the same every time, which means you'll develop paths and strategies to progress further each time you play, and you'll figure out quickly you don't really need to destroy everything to hit the base. You can take 3 hits from everything but the Coteal cannon. 1 hit of that and it's game over. The levels get progressively more difficult, and you get a score at the end, largely based on how far you get. Yars Recharged offers co-op just like the other games in the series, and while I wasn't able to check it out, I'm sure it's a fun experience with friends and family. Also returning are dozens of missions, which in Yars' case are basically specially designed levels that are a bit more puzzling in nature. One of the more unusual things about Yars Recharged currently is its scoring system. It's largely unknown. It doesn't seem to be working the way the original game did, and the score mostly seems to be a base value per level modified by whether you take any hits. Collecting the piles of energy and power-ups at the end of a level does nothing, and getting through the level faster also doesn't give a points bonus. Hopefully the community will figure out how it scores over time. I do miss the bonus and additional life for destroying the swirl mid-air, for example, and it feels weird to leave the leftover energy and power-ups at the end of each stage. There doesn't appear to be a difference in points for destroying things, since you get the points for their destruction at the end of the stage anyway. Between the 30 levels of the arcade mode and the dozens of missions, you'll have hours of gameplay to accomplish. Progression on the missions leaderboard is largely about how many levels you've completed. You can challenge yourself in arcade mode with faster enemies, the loss of the ability to shoot, and more frequent heavy cannons. Toggling each will give you a small percentage boost to your end score. I found the difficulty wasn't worth the bonus, but your mileage may vary. I think the main question everyone wants to know is, does it feel like Yars Revenge? The answer is yes, mostly, although the gameplay is quite a bit evolved with equally deep shooter roots. The core loop of getting a big shot, then executing it remains, and the presentation fits perfectly within the Recharged series. Megan McDuffie once again provides an excellent soundtrack, although by default I noticed the mix in the Atari VCS was a bit off, with the music being buried by the game sound. Once I adjusted it to my liking, it felt much better. If you've played any of the Recharged games to date, you have a pretty good idea what to expect here, and while the choice to do a 2600 game is a new one, the series itself has remained consistent in quality. I love the original Yars Revenge, and Yars Recharged is easily next in line. The game is tough, but once you learn patterns to get through levels and get used to the threats the game poses, it's about as much about good execution as the original ever was. The game supports the classic controller quite well, and I was able to turn the Yar more accurately than with the modern, although using the modern was generally easier due to the familiarity of twin-stick gaming. I'd probably recommend the modern over the classic, but it really comes down to personal taste. Yars Recharged is a great sign of games to come. I'd love to see what Adamvision could do with other originally simpler games like Night Driver or Video Pinball, since they've expanded the idea of Yars gaming and still made it feel authentic to the original. The game is available on most modern platforms and each has its own separate leaderboard. I also played Yars Recharged on Google Stadia, and while I found the graphical presentation to be less high resolution, the game played just fine. As with the other games in the series, achievements and trophies are directly tied to completing the in-menu achievements. Players can complete the co-op missions without having a second player for the trophy inclined. As with other games in the series, you have controller sensitivity options, but not the ability to remap controls, and there are various colorblind modes for accessibility. I'd love to see more accessibility and controller mapping for these games in the future. Thanks for watching. I'll have more game reviews in the coming weeks, including a look at the first series in the Atari XP line. Liking helps get these videos into search results and lets me know you appreciate this kind of presentation. Subscribing gets these videos in your feed. Have fun!